Imagine you are just swiping your credit card for a dozen eggs, and the digital price tag on the shelf actually changes while you are reaching for the carton.
Yeah, just ticking up right in front of you.
Right, it flickers and it ticks up by like 50 cents. Because an algorithm tracking your phone knows exactly how much you rely on that specific brand.
And it knows exactly what your breaking point is.
Exactly. Welcome to the 2026 economy.
I mean, it sounds like a dystopian science fiction novel, but it is genuinely the frontier of modern retail pricing. We have crossed a threshold where the data tracking our behavior is just far more agile than our actual bank accounts.
And that reality is exactly why we are here today. I mean, if you are listening to this, you have probably stood at the grocery store checkout line or, at the gas pump, looked at the final total, and just felt your jaw hit the floor.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone has had that moment recently.
Right. And then you turn on the news and some official is standing at a podium saying, well, great news, inflation is cooling down.
Yeah, that disconnect is huge.
It creates this intense, almost dizzying cognitive dissonance. I mean, The official data says one thing, your wallet says another, and you are just left feeling like you are entirely losing your grip on reality.
It is an incredibly alienating feeling. The gap between the macroeconomic data, like the stuff reported from the top down, and the microeconomic reality felt from the bottom up has simply never been wider.
So our mission for today's deep dive is to bridge that exact gap. We are taking a massive stack of fresh source material from 2026.
A really diverse stack, too.
Yeah, we are pulling from university policy studies, financial advising guides, national security journals, and even tapping into the raw, unfiltered consumer anger we are seeing on YouTube. We are going to decode the 2026 cost of living crisis from the ground up.
Because this absolutely goes beyond why your eggs are more expensive. I mean, this is a systemic shift.
Right. We're going to connect the dots between the psychology of how you spend your money, a deeply embedded economic concept called sticky prices, which we will define, and how a pair of children's shoes can actually explain a massive shift in global geopolitical power.
The through line from a sneaker to a superpower rivalry is surprisingly direct when you understand the mechanics of how money moves right now.
So to you, the listener, if you have been feeling the pinch, if you have been sitting at your kitchen table wondering if you suddenly forgot how to budget, let me assure you right now, you aren't crazy.
You really aren't.
Things are mathematically, structurally harder. And today we are going to unpack exactly why. So let us start with the fundamental disconnect. Why does cooling inflation feel so punishing?
Well, the frustration everyone is feeling is rooted in a fundamental linguistic trap.
Linguistic trap?
Yeah, I mean, the terminology used by economists and the terminology used by normal people living their lives are entirely divorced from one another. We have excellent data on this from Choices Magazine and Platinum Point Financial. Both of these sources highlight a critical distinction that policymakers celebrate, but consumers actively suffer through. And that is the difference between disinflation and deflation.
Okay, let us break those two concepts down carefully. Because when a normal person hears inflation is down, their immediate logical assumption is that prices are going down.
Exactly. And that assumption is completely wrong.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. What we are experiencing in 2026 is disinflation. Disinflation is simply a reduction in the rate of inflation.
Okay, so a reduction in the rate.
Right. It means prices are still rising, just not as fast as they were last month or last year. If inflation drops from, say, 8% to 2%, which is roughly where we are hovering, it doesn't erase the 8% increase that already happened.
It just adds on top.
Exactly. It adds another 2% on top of it.
It is like driving a car. Like if you are speeding down the highway at 90 miles per hour and you ease off the gas so you are only going 70 miles per hour, you have decelerated.
Right. You slowed your acceleration.
But you are still moving forward really fast. You definitely haven't put the car in reverse. The prices are the miles, and those miles are still adding up on the odometer.
That is the perfect analogy. Disinflation is just easing off the gas pedal. Deflation, which is what consumers actually want when they hear inflation is cooling, would be putting the car in reverse.
Which would mean prices dropping.
Right. Deflation means prices are actively dropping, meaning the inflation rate goes below zero, and we're absolutely not in a deflationary period.
So the car is still barreling down the highway. And when we look at the Michigan State University policy report on inflation dynamics, you can see just how much ground that car has covered.
The numbers are staggering.
They really are. They looked at a 5-year span from 2019 to 2024. The Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, the CPIU, which is the standard benchmark, rose by 30% over that period.
30% in 5 years is a catastrophic evaporation of purchasing power.
I mean, normally, what is the historical average supposed to be?
The historical average for inflation is supposed to be around 2% a year. So over 5 years, you would expect roughly a 10 to 11% compounded increase.
But instead, we got 30.
Instead, we got hit with a 30% wall. Yes.
And the Michigan study breaks it down by category, which is where it really hurts. Over that 5-year window, groceries are up 30%.
Which is brutal on a weekly basis.
Yeah. And housing, which is the largest fixed cost for almost everyone, is up an astonishing 49%.
Almost 50%. It's unreal.
Gas is up 18%, but that masks the wild volatility we live through, like, when it peaked at over $5 a gallon in June of 2022.
Right. The average hides those extreme pain points.
So when a government spokesperson stands up and says, well, great news, food at home inflation has dropped to 1% recently, they are cheering because the car has slowed down to 1 mile per hour.
Right. They are celebrating the current speed, but they are entirely ignoring the fact that the car is already 100 miles down the road and the consumer is exhausted from the journey.
This actually brings up a psychological phenomenon mentioned in the Choices magazine study. Despite the actual food-at-home inflation rate dropping to around 1%, their polling showed that over 60% of consumers still strongly agree that prices are rapidly rising.
Yes.
So why is there such a massive gap between the recent data and the human perception?
Well, economists refer to this as base period bias.
Base period bias.
Yeah, it is a fascinating quirk in how data is calculated versus how human memory works. When the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports a 1% inflation rate for, say, May 2024, their mathematical baseline, their base period, is May 2023.
Oh, I see.
They are asking how much did prices go up in the last 12 months. It is a strict year-over-year metric.
And I do not measure my life year over year. Like, I measure my life by eras. I remember what a grocery run cost before the world shut down, before the supply chains broke, before everything felt broken.
Right, your brain doesn't refresh every January.
Exactly. My mental baseline isn't last May. My mental baseline is 2020.
Precisely. Human beings anchor their expectations to periods of stability. So your brain is comparing today's prices to 2020. And when researchers adjust the base period in their models to 2020, measuring a 4-year span instead of a 1-year span, the cumulative inflation rate isn't that comforting 1%.
What is it?
The cumulative rate is a staggering 24.68%.
A quarter of your wealth. Just gone.
Gone. You need 25% more money today just to buy the exact same standard of living you had 4 years ago.
That is depressing.
I mean, you haven't upgraded your house, you haven't bought a nicer car, you are just buying the same loaf of bread and paying the same utility bills, and it costs a quarter more.
So the math absolutely validates the frustration, but if the compounding math explains part of this universal anger, the rest of it seems to come down to human behavioral psychology.
Yeah, it is not just the numbers.
Right. It is specifically the mechanics of how and where we spend our money and who is standing on the other side of the cash register.
This gets into the concept of purchase frequency, which the Choices magazine study details beautifully.
Purchase frequency. Okay.
When you look at the total disposable income of the average American household, food at home, so groceries actually only accounts for about 5.3% of what we spend.
Really?
Yeah.
Just 5.3%.
Mathematically, yes. It has hovered around 5% for the last 20 years. It is a remarkably small piece of the pie.
But emotionally, the grocery bill feels like it dictates my entire financial life. Like, it feels massive.
Because of how often you interact with that specific expense. Think about the cadence of your life. You buy a house maybe once a decade, maybe once in your life.
If you are lucky.
Right. You buy a car every 5 to 7 years. You negotiate your rent once a year. But you are swiping your debit card for milk, eggs, bread, and produce constantly, multiple times a week.
So the sheer repetition of the transaction amplifies the pain. Every time you swipe, you feel it.
Exactly. Because these purchases are so frequent, they heavily skew our perception of the entire macroeconomic environment. It creates a well-documented cognitive bias. We overestimate total systemic inflation because the items we buy most frequently are the items we are hypersensitive to. We are constantly reminded of the price changes.
And it doesn't help that the things we buy most frequently are the exact products where companies seem to be playing the most aggressive mind games with us.
Oh, the mind games are very real.
I want to bring in a source here that isn't a university study. It is a YouTube video from a channel called Conjured Stories.
Yes, that was a great poll.
The host is essentially just ranting into the camera about her grocery bills, but she manages to hit on some incredibly deep structural realities that consumers are feeling in their bones.
What is compelling about that video is how perfectly her street-level frustration aligns with corporate earnings called transcripts.
Right. She points out that the initial justifications for high prices, the global pandemic, shattered supply chains, the avian flu wiping out egg-laying hens, all of those excuses made logical sense at the time. Consumers accepted them.
We all understood the world was broken.
But here we are in 2026. Supply chains have largely stabilized. Shipping container costs have normalized. The acute crises are over. Yet, prices have not come down.
She calls it a stress test. She argues that companies realized the pandemic gave them cover to raise prices, and in doing so, they discovered the consumer could actually bear a lot more pain than they previously thought.
Which is such a cynical but believable take.
So instead of lowering prices when their own costs normalized, they just locked the high prices in. And they didn't stop there.
No, they didn't. She brings up two tactics that are driving people absolutely insane: shrinkflation and skimpflation. Let us start with shrinkflation because we all know it, but how pervasive is it really?
Shrinkflation is essentially inflation by stealth. You pay the exact same price for a product, but the package size is reduced.
Right. The YouTuber specifically mentions Tyson chicken nuggets getting noticeably smaller per bag.
But it is everywhere. A box of cereal drops from 12 ounces to 10.5 ounces. A bottle of sports drink goes from 32 ounces to 28 ounces. The sticker price doesn't change, so your brain doesn't immediately register the inflation, but your cost per ounce has skyrocketed.
It feels like a betrayal of trust. You are buying the same box you always buy. But she argues that skimpflation is actually worse.
It is more insidious, for sure.
Skimpflation is when the price stays the same, the size of the package stays the same, but the actual quality of the product is secretly downgraded.
Right. The ingredient substitution.
She gives this great example of buying a premium barista special oat milk. She used to love it because it frothed perfectly for coffee, but suddenly it tastes different.
It just doesn't work the same.
Yeah. She reads the back of the carton and realizes they have quietly swapped out higher quality ingredients and subbed in a bunch of cheap seed oils to act as emulsifiers and create that foam.
So the company maintained its profit margins in the face of rising agricultural costs by literally degrading the nutritional profile and quality of the food.
And this ties directly into a broader structural issue she touches on, which is market consolidation. Like, why can't a company degrade their product and get away with it?
She points the finger at massive conglomerates, using Nestle as a stand-in for the industry.
Right. When you don't have robust, aggressive competition, the market mechanics break down.
Exactly. If one massive parent company owns dozens of the sub-brands in the dairy aisle, there is very little incentive for them to lower prices or improve quality to win your business.
Because they already have it.
Right. They're optimizing for Wall Street earnings reports, maintaining record profit margins, and they know the consumer fundamentally has nowhere else to go.
Which brings us back to the nightmare scenario I mentioned at the very beginning of this deep dive. Data-driven surge pricing. She talks about the fear of grocery stores implementing digital price tags that change based on algorithmic demand, or worse, micro-targeted pricing.
The micro-targeting aspect is the ultimate weaponization of consumer data. The technology exists to track your digital footprint, your loyalty card history, even your location data within a store using beacon technology.
That is just creepy.
It is. The theoretical model, and we have seen beta tests of this concept, is dynamic pricing applied to everyday essentials.
How does that actually look for the shopper?
Well, if an algorithm knows you are a high-income earner who rigidly buys organic pasture-raised eggs every Sunday at 10 a.m., and your purchasing history shows you never substitute for a cheaper brand, the algorithm calculates your specific price elasticity.
Your breaking point.
Yes. If it knows you will tolerate paying $12 for those eggs before you walk away, the digital tag ensures you never see a price lower than $12.
It completely destroys the concept of a fair, transparent market price. It is extracting the maximum possible capital from every individual based on their unique vulnerability.
It is highly personalized extraction.
No wonder people are so angry. And this shared anger actually bleeds into how we filter our reality. There is a finding in that Michigan State study that is absolutely fascinating regarding how we process economic pain through a partisan lens.
This is a critical piece of data because it shows that the economy isn't just a spreadsheet. It is the narrative.
A narrative, yeah.
When the researchers at Michigan State analyzed inflation perceptions, they controlled for all the standard demographic variables. They equalized for income level, age, education, and whether the respondent lived in an urban or rural area.
So everyone is on an even playing field for the data.
Right. Holding all of that constant, they found that political affiliation was the single most influential factor in how someone experienced inflation.
Look, regardless of who you vote for, the mechanics of this are wild to think about. Just impartial data here.
Absolutely impartial.
Yeah.
The data showed that Republicans were nearly 3 times more likely to perceive higher inflation than political independents.
3 times?
On the flip side, Democrats were significantly less likely to perceive higher inflation.
You have 2 people making the exact same salary, walking down the exact same grocery aisle, looking at the exact same $7 carton of eggs. But the political media ecosystem they inhabit literally alters the severity of the threat their brain registers.
Really, guys.
One person sees a minor annoyance, the other sees an existential crisis destroying the country.
It highlights how deeply interwoven our financial realities and our ideological identities have become.
Okay, I need to jump in here and aggressively challenge a premise we have been building. The YouTuber makes a very compelling emotional case that this is all just corporate greed. Conglomerates squeezing us, Wall Street demanding blood, algorithms stealing our money.
It's a strong narrative.
But I'm looking at this from a basic free market perspective. If Target is price gouging me on paper towels, why wouldn't Walmart, who has the supply chain power to do so, just slash their prices to the bone, undercut Target, and steal millions of customers?
And that is the logical assumption, yes.
If costs have normalized, shouldn't brutal market competition force prices back down? Does corporate greed really override the laws of supply and demand?
That is exactly the right question to ask. And the answer is that, while corporate profit-seeking is obviously a constant factor, chalking this all up to pure greed is a massive oversimplification.
So it is not just greed.
No. It ignores the invisible, heavy mechanics of how macro markets actually function. To understand why Walmart doesn't just slash prices instantly, we have to look at the Wikipedia entry provided in our sources on a foundational economic concept called nominal rigidity.
Nominal rigidity. It sounds like an engineering term for a steel beam.
It acts like one in the economy. It is more commonly referred to by economists as sticky prices or sticky wages. The core principle here is a rejection of the perfect frictionless market.
Frictionless market.
Yeah, in a purely theoretical neoclassical economic model, markets clear instantly. If demand for a product drops, the price of that product immediately drops to find a new equilibrium where people will buy it again.
Like a perfectly balanced scale.
Yeah, exactly. But the real world is full of friction. Nominal rigidity posits that prices and wages are sticky, meaning they are highly resistant to changing, especially downward. They do not adjust instantly to shifts in the broader economy.
Okay, let us pull the mechanics apart. Why are they sticky? What is the glue holding that price high?
Macroeconomists generally divide the glue into 2 different models: time-dependent models and state-dependent models. Let us start with time-dependent. The most famous example is the Taylor model, which revolves around staggered contracts.
Staggered contracts, like union negotiations.
Precisely. Imagine you run a large manufacturing firm. You do not buy your raw materials day by day at market price.
Right, that would be too volatile.
You sign a massive supplier contract that locks in your cost for steel or plastic for the next 12 months. Similarly, you negotiate a labor contract with a union that legally guarantees a specific wage for your workers for the next 3 years.
So your hands are tied.
Your input costs are literally, legally fixed by the calendar. So even if the global economy crashes tomorrow, you cannot lower the price of the widget you sell because the costs to make that widget are legally bound by those time-dependent contracts.
That makes total sense. The calendar dictates the stickiness. Now, in the outline, there was mention of something called the Calvo model and random Poisson processes. Stop right there. What on earth is a Poisson process, and why does it dictate the price of my groceries?
I know, it sounds like advanced quantum physics, but the Calvo model is actually quite intuitive. A Poisson process is just a mathematical concept used to describe events that happen at random, unpredictable intervals.
Random intervals.
In the context of sticky prices, the Calvo model suggests that firms in an economy do not all change their prices at the same time. There is no master clock. Instead, price changes happen randomly.
Why randomly?
Because every firm has its own internal chaos. One firm might change prices because they got a new CEO. Another firm changes prices because their local warehouse flooded. Another changes because of a regional competitor.
So they're all on their own weird schedules.
Because these price changes happen at completely random, uncoordinated intervals across millions of businesses, the overall price level of the entire economy becomes incredibly sluggish. It is like trying to get a stadium full of people to sit down at the exact same millisecond. It takes time for the ripple effect to settle. That random staggering creates profound stickiness.
Okay, so that is the calendar and the chaos. What is the state-dependent model?
State-dependent models are driven by changes in the actual economic environment, and the central concept here is menu costs.
Like a literal restaurant menu.
Literally, think about a diner. If the wholesale price of ground beef goes up by 10 cents, the owner of the diner doesn't instantly change the price of a hamburger on the menu.
Why not?
Because to change the price, they have to hire a designer to update the menu, pay a printing company to print hundreds of new menus, and throw away the old ones. The physical act of changing the price costs money.
But what about a retail store? They don't have menus.
Same thing. You have to pay employees overtime to walk down the aisles and physically swap out thousands of plastic price tags. You have to update the software systems. You have to run new marketing campaigns.
Wow, okay, so changing the price is actually an investment.
And beyond the physical menu costs, there is a massive psychological menu cost. Every time you raise a price, you risk alienating your customer base. You burn goodwill. So, businesses will endure shrinking profit margins for as long as possible. They will wait until the financial pain of not raising the price heavily outweighs the menu cost of changing it.
So, to use an analogy, nominal rigidity acts exactly like a ratchet mechanism in a mechanic's toolbox.
A ratchet, yes.
When you turn the wrench to tighten a bolt, it clicks easily upward, costs rise, prices ratchet up, but the gears lock into place. If you try to reverse it to pull the prices back down, the wrench won't budge.
It holds the tension.
Yeah, the mechanism is designed to hold tension. Prices easily ratchet up during a crisis, but when the crisis fades, the menu costs and the staggered contracts lock those high prices into place.
That is a flawless analogy. The ratchet locks. And the macroeconomic consequence of this is terrifying.
Really? Terrifying.
Yes. If even a small sector of the economy operates with sticky prices, it acts as a massive anchor. It drags down the flexible parts of the economy. If prices cannot fall to stimulate demand when a recession hits, what does a company do?
I mean, they panic.
They cut output and they fire workers. Sticky prices are the fundamental mechanical reason why economic shocks result in mass unemployment instead of just cheaper goods.
And if you want to see this ratchet mechanism compounding in real time in everyday life, we have to look at the Insured Better data regarding car insurance in 2026. This is where sticky prices stack on top of each other.
Oh, car insurance is the perfect case study.
The data shows that average car insurance rates jumped 17% last year, a 17% hike in a single year for a legally mandated product. Why?
Because car insurance isn't just one product. It is a derivative product that reflects the cost of dozens of underlying industries, all of which are currently experiencing severe stickiness. It is a masterclass in compounding friction.
Okay, let us pull the threads on car insurance. What is actually driving that 17% spike?
First, you have a behavioral reversion. Post-COVID, traffic volume returned to normal, meaning frequency of accidents returned to normal, more claims.
So crashes.
But the severity of the claims is what broke the model. The cost to physically repair a vehicle is up 36% since 2021.
Why are repairs suddenly so expensive? Is it just the cost of steel?
It is technology.
Yeah.
Specifically the massive proliferation of electric vehicles and heavily computerized internal combustion cars. A minor fender bender in 2010 meant replacing a piece of stamped steel and a plastic bumper.
Simple fix.
Right. A minor fender bender in 2026 means replacing a bumper that houses a half-dozen ultrasonic sensors, a backup camera, and radar modules for lane keep assist.
Oh, wow. So you're replacing computers, not bumpers.
Exactly. If you damage an EV, the labor rates are higher because the mechanics require specialized high-voltage training. Furthermore, if an EV battery pack is even slightly compromised in a low-speed collision, safety protocols often dictate the entire battery must be replaced.
Which is huge.
It turns a $2,000 repair into a $15,000 total loss. Those high-tech parts and specialized labor rates are incredibly sticky.
So the cars are basically rolling supercomputers, and fixing them costs a fortune. What else?
Supply chain crime. The Insured Better report highlights that catalytic converter thefts spiked an unbelievable 290% over the last few years.
290.
Yes. The precious metals inside them, rhodium, palladium, platinum, became more valuable than gold. Organized theft rings decimated urban fleets. Auto theft overall soared due to vulnerabilities in keyless entry systems.
And insurance has to pay for that.
Right. That forces insurance actuaries to massively hike comprehensive coverage premiums, which cover theft and vandalism.
And those premiums lock in. They ratchet up.
And then there is the ultimate sticky cost, climate change. The actuary models that insurance companies use to predict natural disasters are completely broken.
Broken how?
They are paying out billions more than expected for vehicles destroyed by floods, hail, and wildfires. And the geographical disparity is staggering. If you look at the data, in Ohio, where weather risk is moderate, the average premium is $1,112.
Okay, manageable.
But in Florida, where the risk of catastrophic hurricanes is astronomical, the reinsurance markets have panicked, and the average car insurance premium has skyrocketed to $4,326 a year.
Over $4,000 just to legally drive a car to work.
Because the underlying costs, the advanced sensors, the specialized EV labor, the stolen catalytic converters, the climate payouts, all of those inputs are sticky. They aren't going down. So the insurance premium, which is just a reflection of those costs, ratchets up and locks.
Okay, so we have established a clear mechanical picture of the economy right now. The engine is built with a ratchet mechanism. Prices go up, they stick, and they do not easily come down.
Exactly.
So what happens when you take an economic system that is rigid, already stressed, and completely lacking flexibility, and you hit it with massive, unpredictable global shocks?
What happens is you expose what Andy Polk, writing in his analysis for War on the Rocks, brilliantly terms the glass jaw of the American economy.
The glass jaw. In boxing, that means a fighter looks incredible, massive muscles, great footwork, but if they take one solid punch to the chin, their legs give out and they are unconscious on the mat.
He is the perfect metaphor. Polk argues that traditionally, the vast American economic system had incredible agility. It had deep corporate cash reserves, flexible supply chains, and robust profit margins.
So it could take a punch.
Right. These acted as shock absorbers. If a crisis hit somewhere in the world, the system could absorb the blow, and the average consumer would barely feel a ripple at the checkout counter. But over the last few years, a sequence of stacking shocks has systematically destroyed those shock absorbers.
Let us walk through these specific shocks chronologically, because the sequence is everything. Shock number one, according to the War on the Rocks piece, was tariffs.
Yes, the tariffs.
Now, we are looking at the Trump administration's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, i.e. EPA, and the subsequent Section 122 and 301 tariffs. To be completely clear, we are looking exclusively at the economic mechanics here. Mathematically, what does a tariff actually do to a global supply chain?
Right, let us just look at the mechanics. A tariff is widely misunderstood as a tax paid by a foreign country. It is not.
Okay, then who pays it?
A tariff is a tax collected at the port of entry, paid by the domestic importing company. If an American company wants to bring in a shipping container of steel from overseas, the American company writes a check to the U.S. Treasury before the container leaves the dock.
So it is a direct tax on American businesses importing goods.
Precisely. And in a modern, hyper-globalized economy, very few products are entirely made in one place. According to the National Association of Manufacturers, 56% of all U.S. goods imports are actually intermediate inputs.
Meaning what?
Meaning they are parts, chemicals, or raw materials used by American factories to build finished products domestically.
So when these broad tariffs were applied, it wasn't just taxing finished televisions. It was taxing the screws, the plastic resin, the microchips needed by American factories.
Yes. It acted as a massive, sudden, multi-billion-dollar cost increase injected directly into the middle of the American manufacturing supply chain. Polk highlights John Deere as a prime example.
John Deere, the tractor company.
Right. In 2026, John Deere faced an estimated $1 billion tariff bill just to import the components they required to build their tractors and farm equipment inside the United States.
$1 billion in new taxes? But here's the paradox. When those tariffs were initially rolled out, we didn't see an instant equal spike in prices at the retail level. Why didn't John Deere just instantly raise tractor prices by $1 billion?
Because of the nominal rigidity and menu costs we just discussed. If John Deere or any consumer brand instantly raises prices by 25%, demand completely collapses.
People just stop buying.
Exactly. Competitors might hold their prices low to steal market share.
Huh.
So in the real world, companies desperately try to hide the cost from the consumer for as long as possible.
How do you hide a billion-dollar tax bill?
You absorb it. You destroy your own shock absorbers. A KPMG survey cited in the reports found that 43% of consumer goods executives simply accepted a 1 to 5% decline in their gross profit margins.
They just ate the cost.
They ate the cost. They also aggressively deployed the shrinkflation and skimflation tactics we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
They stripped out material innovations, they slowed down research and development, they paused hiring. They essentially burned down their own internal corporate buffer to shield the consumer from the tariff shock.
So an entire economy of corporations spends roughly a year holding its breath, burning through cash reserves, operating on razor-thin margins, just praying for relief.
Right.
And right at the moment when they have absolutely no flexibility left, shock number 2 hits.
Shock number 2, the February 2026 Iran war, which immediately triggered a massive global oil shock.
And as we know, an oil shock doesn't just mean gas is expensive at the pump. Petroleum is the invisible blood of the physical economy.
Petroleum is in literally everything. It is the very first node of the global supply chain. It is the synthetic fabrics in your clothes, the polyurethane foam in your couch, the adhesives holding your electronics together, the fertilizer growing your food, the plastic packaging protecting the food, and the diesel fuel powering the freight trains and cargo ships moving it all.
So it hits every single level.
Yes. When oil spikes, the cost of existence spikes. Energy prices in April 2026 accounted for over 40% of the total massive increase in consumer prices.
Okay, so let me map out this glass jaw mechanism completely. Because companies spent the previous year bleeding their margins dry to hide the cost of the tariffs, their corporate shock absorbers were completely destroyed.
They were running on empty.
So when the oil shock hit the supply chain, there was zero buffer left. The cost of the oil spike had to be passed on to the consumer immediately and brutally.
That is the exact anatomical breakdown of the glass jaw. The first shock set the fragile conditions. The second shock shattered the system.
It's like a 1-2 punch.
In a healthy, robust economy, multiple shocks can be absorbed gradually over time. But in 2026, because of the compounding effects of tariffs and oil, the cost shocks move through the system with terrifying velocity. Polk uses a brilliant, almost absurd example to illustrate this: children's footwear.
Yes. You sent me these notes earlier about children's shoes, and I have to admit, I thought you were crazy. How on earth does a pair of toddler sneakers explain macroeconomic fragility? Break down the math on these shoes.
It is the perfect microcosm of the crisis. Think about what a modern sneaker is made of. It is essentially molded petroleum, synthetic meshes, rubber, EVA foam midsoles.
So it is basically all oil.
Roughly 70% of the cost to manufacture and transport a sneaker has direct exposure to the price of oil. So the February Iran war oil shock hits the shoe industry disproportionately hard.
So the baseline cost of the shoe spikes.
Then you layer the tariffs on top of it. Historically, footwear already faced relatively high standard import duties. But when you added the new 20 to 30% IEPA tariffs on top of those existing duties, U.S. footwear brands were effectively facing an 87.5% cumulative tax rate just to import a pair of children's shoes.
Let me repeat that. An 87.5% tax rate on kids' shoes. That is punitive.
It is entirely unsustainable. Because the footwear companies had already exhausted their profit margins absorbing earlier costs, they could not eat the oil shock in the 87.5% tariff.
So they pass it to the parents?
They had to throw the entire burden onto the consumer instantly. The result: in a single month, April 2026, retail footwear prices spiked 4.2%, a 4.2% jump in 30 days. It was the fastest, most violent rise in shoe prices in 43 months.
The buffer was just gone.
The buffer was gone. The American consumer took the hit directly to the jaw.
And this creates a new paradigm, an unnormal. We are now living in an economic system that is hypersensitive to any minor disruption. But if we pull the camera way back, this is where the deep dive gets genuinely chilling.
It really does scale up.
If an entire domestic population is tapped out just trying to buy groceries, paying sticky car insurance premiums, and facing 87% implicit taxes on toddler shoes, what happens when the government suddenly needs to ask them to fund a multi-trillion-dollar defense effort overseas? How does the glass jaw economy restrict the global power of the United States?
This is where domestic economics directly collides with the war room. The war on the rocks analysis makes a definitive, sobering point. Economic resilience is a hard, immovable ceiling on a nation's capacity for military coercion and power projection.
Explain the mechanics of that ceiling.
Think about the political capital required to wage a sustained conflict. If an administration is facing a domestic public that is dealing with $4.50 a gallon gasoline, rampant tariff-driven inflation, depleted savings, and exhausted household budgets, that administration has virtually zero domestic political runway.
Because the people are just done.
You cannot ask a population to endure the massive financial sacrifices of a major war effort, rationing, supply shortages, tax hikes, when that population feels like they're already making excruciating sacrifices just to keep the lights on and feed their kids. The political backlash would be instantaneous and terminal.
The public simply has no capacity for external burdens, and our geopolitical adversaries are acutely aware of this spreadsheet.
They're watching the data just as closely as we are. Let us examine the May 14 to 15, 2026 summit in Beijing, a high-stakes meeting between the Trump administration and General Secretary Xi Jinping.
Okay, what happened there?
The analysis of this summit is telling. Xi Jinping used his home court advantage not just for photo ops, but to project absolute unapologetic equality with the United States. He weaponized the narrative of American economic strain.
How did he leverage it?
By signaling to the broader global community that the United States is simply too financially exhausted, too internally fractured by inflation and political division, to reliably defend its strategic interests abroad.
That is a bold message to send.
The subtext of the summit, particularly regarding flashpoints like Taiwan or the South China Sea, was clear. The Americans cannot afford a war of attrition with us, because their voters will revolt when the price of flat-screen TVs and antibiotics triples overnight.
But we need to maintain perspective here. It is very easy to paint China as an unstoppable juggernaut in this scenario. But the geopolitical data shows that China is dealing with profound, potentially catastrophic internal weaknesses of their own.
Oh, absolutely. The perception of Chinese invulnerability is largely state-sponsored theater. The structural reality is quite grim.
What are they dealing with?
China is currently managing a massive, slow-motion property crisis that threatens to wipe out the generational wealth of millions of its citizens. Furthermore, their youth unemployment rate reached levels so dangerously high, with millions of college graduates unable to find work, that the Chinese government literally stopped publishing the data to avoid domestic unrest.
Wow, they just stopped publishing the numbers. If their domestic economy is struggling, how are they sustaining their global economic posture? The outline mentions an overproduction and dumping strategy. How exactly does that mechanism work?
Because domestic Chinese consumers are too financially insecure to spend money, the Chinese state has directed massive, centrally planned subsidies into their manufacturing sector. They're building factories to produce solar panels, electric vehicles, and legacy microchips at a scale that vastly exceeds what their own country needs.
So they have an ocean of surplus goods.
Right. And to bypass U.S. tariffs and keep their factories running, they're dumping these heavily subsidized, artificially cheap goods into global markets, often routing them through third-party countries.
Just flooding the zone.
They flood the market with products priced below the actual cost of production.
Which destroys the domestic industries of whichever country they are dumping into.
Precisely. And this strategy is currently alienating the European Union. The EU is watching cheap Chinese EVs flood their ports, threatening to annihilate the German and French automotive industries. So Xi Jinping's swagger at the summit is, in many ways, a desperate projection of strength to mask severe domestic fragility and a highly antagonistic trade strategy that is isolating them from European markets.
But the terrifying point the author of the War on the Rocks piece makes is that this theater works if the global audience buys it. Adversaries like China or Russia do not actually need to match the United States military weapon for weapon. They don't need to outbuild our aircraft carriers, they just need to wait.
It is a strategy of economic attrition waged through supply chains. They wait for our domestic economic shock absorbers to completely erode, knowing that our own internal financial stress, our glass jaw, will paralyze our strategic choices.
Which raises an incredibly dark hypothetical. We have talked about the tariff shock and the oil shock, but what happens if a third, entirely different shock hits this already shattered system?
Well, the author speculates heavily on the possibility of a sovereign debt crisis later in the decade.
A global debt crisis.
Yes, global debt levels and the punishing interest rates required to service that debt are ballooning globally. Now think back to the 2008 global financial crisis.
Right, the housing crash.
When that shock hit, the United States was able to orchestrate a massive, highly coordinated international response. The Federal Reserve, the IMF, the European Central Bank. They worked in tandem to stabilize the system. But the geopolitics of 2026 are entirely different.
Because the trade wars and tariffs have shattered that international trust.
Exactly. We've spent the last decade weaponizing tariffs and fracturing global supply chains. Countries are actively building defensive economic alliances specifically designed to exclude the US dollar and American influence.
So if it happens again.
If a sovereign debt crisis erupts in this current environment, we are highly unlikely to see a coordinated rescue. We will see a fragmented, isolationist response, which means the resulting economic depression will be vastly deeper and longer lasting.
Which brings us crashing back down to earth. From the geopolitical war rooms in Beijing and the macroeconomic models of sticky prices, we have to look at the human level.
Right, the real people.
What is this glass jaw economy, this endless ratchet of compounding costs actually doing to the psyche of everyday people? We have data from the Resume Now 2026 Financial Outlook Report, and honestly, reading through it feels like examining the psychological bruising of an entire society.
It is a brutal read. The survey polled over 1,000 employed adults in the U.S. across various sectors, and it paints a picture of an American workforce that has fundamentally shifted from a mindset of getting ahead to a mindset of pure, terrified survival.
Yeah.
69% of workers currently feel they are underpaid, but that isn't the most devastating statistic.
No, the truly haunting number is about the future.
49% of workers, literally half of the employed adults surveyed, stated they believe their wages will never catch up to the cost of living.
Never.
That is the word they used. Not that they are behind this year, or that they need to wait out a 5-year cycle. They believe that structurally, in their lifetime, they will never break even again.
Half the workforce has mathematically given up hope of ever getting ahead of the treadmill. They believe the ratchet is permanently locked against them. And when a population loses the core belief that their labor will lead to a better life, the societal implications are massive.
It translates directly into delayed lives. 48% of workers report that they have actively postponed a major life milestone, strictly due to the cost of living.
And we need to be clear about what milestone means here. We aren't talking about delaying a kitchen remodel or pushing a vacation to next year.
No, these are massive decisions.
We are talking about delaying the foundational pillars of adulthood. People are delaying buying a home. They are delaying having children because daycare and healthcare are too expensive. They are delaying going back to school to get a degree, or delaying taking a risk on a new career path.
They are pausing their lives.
They are literally putting the narrative arcs of their lives on indefinite pause because they cannot afford the admission ticket to the middle class.
The survey asked a hypothetical question that perfectly underscores this survival mentality. They asked the respondents, if your employer handed you a cost of living raise tomorrow, what is the very first thing you would do with that extra money?
And the answers are so grim. They reflect a population bailing water out of a sinking boat.
37% said they would immediately add it to savings, just trying to build a tiny, desperate buffer against the next emergency.
So not spending it in the economy.
Right. 32% said they would use the raise simply to cover basic, everyday expenses, which means 1/3 of the workforce is currently operating in the red, just existing. 26% said they would use it to pay down high-interest consumer debt.
And what about something fun?
Only 3% of respondents said they would use a raise to take a vacation or do something enjoyable.
Think about the macroeconomic impact of that. It proves that any extra capital injected into the working class right now is instantly absorbed by the basic cost of survival.
There is no buffer for joy.
There is no discretionary spending boom waiting to happen. The money just goes straight to the grocery store or the credit card company.
Which is why the financial advice being published right now reflects this grim reality. The Platinum Point Financial Guide from our sources doesn't talk about thriving, it talks about tactical navigation.
Yeah, their advice is highly practical but feels very defensive. They advise people to ruthlessly track invisible expenses, auditing bank statements to find all those sticky subscription models that quietly bleed $15 a month from your account.
You have to find every leak.
They warn consumers to be incredibly strategic about timing large purchases, avoiding financing anything large while interest rates are this punishing, and crucially, they heavily emphasize the need to build side income or acquire new monetizable skills, explicitly acknowledging that your primary wage is likely going to remain sticky and permanently lag behind real-world inflation.
It is entirely sound financial advice. But fundamentally, it places the massive burden of navigating a broken, heavily rigid macroeconomic system squarely onto the shoulders of the isolated, exhausted individual consumer.
Which breeds a deep systemic mistrust. I was struck by another statistic in that report. 77% of workers say their employers completely lack pay transparency.
That is a massive majority.
They do not understand how their salary bands are calculated. They do not understand the bonus structures. They just know they aren't making enough.
The psychological toll of living in an economy where you feel constantly uninformed, perpetually behind, and subjected to invisible forces like algorithmic pricing and time-dependent corporate contracts is immense.
It just wears you down.
It degrades trust in the employer, it degrades trust in financial institutions, and ultimately, it degrades trust in the social contract itself.
Okay, let us pull all of these massive, heavy threads together and look at the tapestry we have woven today. We started by looking at a grocery store receipt, wondering why the total was so high if the government was insisting inflation was cooling down.
Right, and we learned the painful difference between disinflation and deflation, realizing that a slower rate of increase still leaves us dealing with a massive cumulative 30% price hike over the last 5 years.
We explored how corporate consolidation, data-driven micro-targeting, and the mechanical realities of sticky prices, that ratchet effect of staggered contracts and menu costs, have effectively locked those price hikes into the bedrock of the economy.
We zoomed out to the global stage, examining how the brutal combination of broad supply chain tariffs and sudden oil shocks completely shattered the American economy's shock absorbers.
Creating that glass jaw.
Yes. Creating a fragile glass jaw system where costs are instantly and violently passed directly to the consumer.
And finally, we saw the ultimate consequence. A financially stressed, exhausted public that fundamentally limits America's ability to project power and deter adversaries globally, while simultaneously forcing half the country to indefinitely delay the basic milestones of their own lives.
It is a lot to take in.
It is a heavy, heavy stack of reports. But honestly, understanding the specific mechanisms behind the pain, the algorithms, the contracts, the supply chains, actually makes it slightly less maddening. You aren't crazy. The system is just currently designed to squeeze.
And that is the ultimate takeaway. Knowledge is the very first step toward resilience. If you understand the mechanics of how the machine actually works, you are far better equipped to navigate it, to protect your own wallet, and to see through the narratives being spun on the evening news.
Which leaves us with one final thought to mull over, something outside the spreadsheets. We talked at length about how this economic strain limits the political runway for military action, giving adversaries an opening. But what about the cultural runway? If 48% of people are indefinitely delaying buying homes or going back to school or starting families, what does the actual fabric of American society look like 10 years from now?
That is the real unknown.
When an entire generation skips its major life milestones, are we just delaying consumer purchases, or are we fundamentally rewriting the timeline and the character of the American experience?
That is a profound question, and one that economic models are completely incapable of answering.
But it is the reality we all have to live through. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the numbers, keep looking behind the price tags, and we will catch you next time.